Okay, so now we're going to look at adding a form in that's going to allow the user to enter their credit card details and actually join and become a subscriber. We've already looked at how we can force the user to be a subscribed user, but we're going to do it properly now via Laravel Cashier. So what we need to do first of all is really create the route that's going to allow the user to join. So under routes, what we need to do is we need to make sure a user isn't subscribed before they actually decide they want to subscribe. So imagine yourself in a situation where you are a subscribed user. You don't want to be able to access this join page. So let's go ahead and create a group. And what we're going to do is before, we're going to check if the user is not subscribed. Now we haven't created this filter yet, so we'll do that in just a moment. Let's just define the closure here. So what we need to do is we need to define the not subscribed filter. We're also going to define the subscribed filter as well. So just down here, let's go ahead and add these in. So Laravel Cashier actually gives these to us on their GitHub page, but let's type these out. So I'm going to say filter subscribed. So we're going to create a subscribed one, then a not subscribed one. So down here, what we want to do is we want to check in here if auth check and auth user is not subscribed, then we want to do something. So in this case, what I'm going to do is just redirect. Let's just pull this down. Want to redirect home. In actual fact, we'll redirect to subscription. And we want to redirect with a message saying you need to be subscribed to do that. So what this is going to do is if the user isn't subscribed, it's going to redirect them, and we can just as easily do the opposite to this, which is not subscribed, and we can just remove this here. So if the user is subscribed and they're trying to access an area that they don't need to, like the join page, we will just redirect them back to subscription with no message. Now we'll implement this notice a bit later on. So under our routes now, we now need to define the join post and join get route. So let's define this out here. Okay, so inside of here, we want to call this something. So I'm going to call this subscription join. And I'm going to use our subscription controller. And you probably guessed it's going to be get join. So we can duplicate this down because we need a post for this as well. We need to be able to post this data. What we can do is we can get rid of as, and we can change this to post. And then we can change this method that we're accessing to post join. So inside our subscription controller down here, we're going to create get join, which is just going to be the page the user lands on. And then we can create post join, which is going to be the page that the user submitted the form to. So under get join, we want to just return a view. So this will be subscription.join. So let's create that view now. So under subscription, a new file, and we'll call that join.blade.php. And we'll do exactly the same thing as we did in index. So we'll pretty much just copy all of this, paste that in there, and just get rid of that. Now what we do need to do is we do need to implement some scripts here. So we yielded in some scripts inside of our template just down here. And the scripts we need basically come from Stripe. And this is the Stripe.js library that allows us to do things like process payments and basically connect to their API. So let's add some script tags just in here. And that is the URL. You can find that on their website, but it's basically just an HTTPS link to js.stripe.com/version2. Now we also want to include our custom stripe.javascript as well. So we use the asset helper here to include JS stripe.js. Now we've not created this yet. So under public, let's create a new folder called JS. And in here, let's create a new file called stripe.js, like so. Now we're going to implement a very custom solution here because we want to do things very specifically. We're not going to be using the Stripe button that allows you to just click and process a payment because we want this to be as custom as possible. Really, we don't want the user to know that we're using Stripe. You might not care, but in this case, we're going to implement a very custom solution. So let's build up the form and then we'll look at the JavaScript to actually handle the form. So the form here, we know this is going to submit through to the subscription join. So we say URL action subscription join, and the method here is going to be post. So inside of here then we can just create all of the labels that we need, and then we can just post this through to remember this here. Now what we also need to do is look into security here. So I'm going to say before cross-site request forgery. So we're going to add some cross-site request forgery protection to when we submit this form. So what we can then do inside of join is we can add a token. So form token. So let's just check everything so far. We haven't got a link to this, so let's just update our index page. So I'm going to say join now links through to URL, use the action method, and this will link through to subscription join. And there we go. We hit that, and then we go through to that subscription join page. And you can see that that's loading in the Stripe JavaScript library down here and our custom Stripe JavaScript file as well, which we're going to build on later. So inside of join now, let's actually create out our form. So let's create a div with the class of row here. And inside of this, we'll create a div with a class of large 6. And let's just append columns onto there. This is basically just Foundation's markup and it's and the classes that it uses. So you don't really have to do this at all. So in here, this is going to be the area where we choose a plan, and the second area, or the other half of the area, is where we enter our card details. So let's just preview this in the browser like so. And there we go. So we've got the ability to choose a plan here and enter card details here. So under choose plan, let's create a label here. And inside of here, let's say chosen plan. Now we can come down and we can create a select element. It's important we give this a name because we need to pick this up from within our controller. And we have a couple of options in here. And these are just going to be the options that we have created within Stripe. So the first one is going to have a value of small. And here we'll say small, and then we'll give the price. So we can say $5 a month. And this one here is going to be large or big or whatever we called it. Large. That's $10 a month. So we can pick that up when we submit it by either the fact that the value is small or large. So inside of card details now, we basically want to, I'm going to build this here, but then we're going to extract it into a partial file. And the reason that we're going to do that is because we need this also on the update card view. And we don't want to duplicate the markup because if there are any changes, that's going to be really, really annoying. So the first thing we want is the ability to enter a card number. So we'll create a label here and we'll say card number. And in here we'll have an input type of text. Now what we do is we have these data attributes that allow Stripe to fetch this data. Now this is really important that you don't give these name attributes, and the reason for that is that if this data does, if the any of your JavaScript fails and you do actually post this data to your server, it could technically be stored on your server. So what we want to do is we only want to provide data attributes. That will mean that when we submit it through, we're not actually passing data to our server. So this is data. This data attribute is called number. Now we also then down here want another row, and you can mark this up however you want. This is just rough marking things up. And inside of here we're going to have, let's just pull this down a little bit. We're going to have a class of large 4 columns. So the first one is going to be the expiry month. So in here, this is going to be expiry month. And in here, we're going to have an input type of text again. And again, we're adding this stripe attribute here, which is exp month. And we can pretty much just duplicate this 3 times and just change what we need. So we've got expiry month, expiry year, and again, this changes like that. And then under here, it's the CVC. So that's just the code typically found on the back or the front of the card if it's an American Express. So we've now got this in here. Let's just preview what this is looking like. There we go. So we've got the ability to choose a small or a large plan, enter a card number, expiry month, expiry year, and CVC. And just down here below here, we want to include our button that allows us to submit the form. So we're going to say button. We're going to give this a class of button just to utilize some of the front end styles of Foundation. And this is going to be called make payment. Now it's this lot here that we want to take and put into a partial. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to include subscription dot partials card. So under subscription, let's create a new folder called partials. And inside of here, let's create a new file called card.blade.php and paste that in. And in fact, I need to rename this file to _card. So we still get the same result here, but we've got our button there as well now. So now what we're ready to do is actually fill in this form and start to actually process payments. And then we're going to look at the token that Stripe generates for us. So what we need to do is inside of Stripe.js, we need to target this form somehow and then actually process it rather than actually submit this straight away. So we're going to add an ID to this called subscription form, or whatever you want to call it, subscription form. So inside of Stripe.js now, we need to start writing out the JavaScript code we need to process this. So I'm going to say document ready. And what we're going to do is we need to set the Stripe public key, or the publishable key. So we can access the Stripe library like this. You'll notice that if I just get rid of this and I enter Stripe down here, you can see that we've got things like set publishable key and a variety of other functionality as well from the Stripe library that we loaded in. So we're going to say stripe.setPublishable key. And in here, we need to paste in that publishable key. Now remember, we're working on a test environment. So if we just grab this here and paste it in, you may need to do a little bit of tweaking inside of Laravel to change this over from your config. But I'm just going to leave this as it is for now. I'll let you decide how you want to handle that. So we want to now, because we're using jQuery, we can pretty much write this out really, really quickly. We'll say not premium, subscription form button. Now on a click of that button, we want to go ahead and run this callback. Now we're going to set a couple of variables. The first one is the form itself. So we're just going to sort of self-identify that form, even though we already selected it above. So we're going to say subscription form. We also have the submit button, because what we want to do is we want to do things like disable the submit button and add a little message in there. So we're going to say form.find button. Be careful if you have any other buttons on your form, otherwise this will interfere. And then we also want submit initial text. And that's just basically the submit form's text in its initial state. And that just basically means that if we do change the text on here, we don't need to update that inside of our library. And it also means we can have different texts as well. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry. We'll have a look at that in a moment. So submit, we want to change the attribute. And we want to set basically the disabled attribute to disabled. So let's just check so far if this is all working. So when I hit this, that should disable, and it has. You can see I can't click it or do anything with it at the moment. But what we now want to do is we want to change the text. So I'm going to say text just one moment. So now what's going to happen is when we hit that, it says just one moment. Perfect. And that will be the case while we are processing the next code that we're going to write. So we're going to say stripe.card.create token. Now what this is going to do is it's going to take our form and it's going to generate a token from this. So all we do is we provide the form and the Stripe library does the rest. It picks up them data attributes that we created earlier and it will do everything that we need to do. Now we have a callback here, and inside of here we have the status and the response. So what we can do is we can check these in here. But I'm going to store a variable up here called token first that we're going to actually assign our token to. So in here what we can do is we can say if response.error. So if there's been an error for whatever reason, we're going to say form.find. Now we're going to find a class called Stripe errors, and we're going to set the errors that have been returned from Stripe in there, response.error.message. Now we don't have this at the moment, so inside of our partial, we're going to create a div up here with a class of Stripe errors. We're going to say panel, and we're going to say hide. So panel is a foundation component, if you like, and hide will just hide this. So at the moment, when we hit enter on this, we don't see it at all. I'll just get rid of that to show you what it will look like. So I'll just put oops in there for now, just as an example, and you'll see it looks like that. So what is actually going to happen then is, if we put that back in there, what's going to happen is we're then going to, from here, show that. So for example, if we don't enter anything, it adds the message in there and then shows this. So we're doing this all with JavaScript. Now, what we also want to do at this point is allow the user to correct their errors. So for example, if I didn't type anything in and I hit made payment, I can't submit the form again. So we need to revert this. So we're going to say submit.remove attribute, and then we're going to say disabled. So we remove the disabled attribute, and then we're going to say submit.text. We know the initial text because we stored it up here, so we can basically just pop that in there. Now, otherwise, we want to get the token. So let's do a console log on response.id. And I'm going to type in a valid credit card here. So 4242, and that 4 times is a test Visa card. So I'm going to enter a valid expiry month and a valid expiry year. These need to be valid, and a CVC. And I'm going to hit make payment. Let's check in the console. You can see that we get this token. That's the token that we use on the PHP side to actually charge the user's card and subscribe them to the subscription they've chosen. So instead of console logging it, which is useless, I'm going to set the token variable that I created up here to the response ID, like so. And then I'm going to say form.append. Now this is really important because we need some way to actually submit this token through to our PHP page. So all we do is we append on create a value that we create. So in here we just create a selector like this, and we say input type hidden name token, and then we could just say value equals, but we can use jQuery to help us out on this one, .val token. And then what we want to do is submit the form. So let's just check out how this works, because it can get a little bit confusing. I'm going to type in a valid expiry and credit card number and CVC, hit make payment. That submits the form. We go through to the post version of join. If we check the network tab here and we scroll up, you can see that under our form data, we've got the token here. This token is the cross-site request forgery protection with Laravel, so don't confuse the two. But this token here is our Stripe token, so we now have access to this within PHP. So let's take a look at actually echoing that on that page, just so we're very, very clear. So under our subscription controller, once we post join, if we do an echo on input get token, you'll see that we get that token. So now what we can do is actually use Stripe's function, Laravel cache's functionality to actually join us up to the chosen plan. Remember, as well as submitting this form, we have the plan as well. So let's just check this one as well. So we can say plan. And there we go. So we've chosen small in this case. So let's actually create the functionality now to charge the user's card and subscribe them to this plan. Now Laravel Cache makes this extremely easy to do. All we need to do is access the currently logged in user. Remember, we stored this up here. And we need to say subscription. Now in this case, we're just going to pass in input get plan. Now bear in mind, I'm just blindly passing this in. You might want to do some validation in here to check that the plan does exist, but if this plan doesn't exist, things will fail. You might also want to try and catch errors that might occur because of this. For example, a user's card may be declined or something like that. So this obviously will still not work if the user's card is declined, but it's nice to report back an error. I'm just going to do this just literally to explain the cache functionality. We'll be here all day if we start trying to catch every possible error. So now what we're going to do is we're going to chain on the create method, and this goes ahead and takes the token of the user's card that's been generated by Stripe. So I'm going to say input get token, and then I'm going to pass an array of details I want to store on Stripe. So this is obviously very limited, but in this case I'm going to choose to store the user's email. So I'm going to say this user email, and that's it. Now let's go ahead and just redirect, and we're going to redirect back to the subscription page, and we're going to redirect with a notice. And that notice is going to be, you are now subscribed. Thanks. So we need to set up this notice functionality. So let's do that really quickly here. It won't take a moment. So under template, I'm going to create a new folder in here called partials. And under here, I'm going to create a new file called notice.blade.php. Now inside of here, I'm going to do a quick if statement to say if session has notice, then I'm going to create a div with a class of alert box, and inside of here I'm going to output that notice that we get from stored in the session, so like so. So now that's needs to be including in our main template, so we can include this just up here. Like so. So now let's test out the ability to actually enter my card details and sign up. Now just to confirm, under Stripe, you can see that I don't have any customers yet. Once we've entered our details, I will then become a customer. Remember, we've got a couple of plans, and there are a couple of payments I've already made on this account, but we'll see this £8.76 jump up when we make a payment here. So let's do this now. Under here, let's enter our details. And let's hit make payment. And there we go. We've been redirected with the alert that we've just created as part of the template partials. And you'll notice the message on the main subscription page has now been changed to tell me that I am subscribed. So let's take a look over in Stripe at customers. Let's just give this a refresh. And you can see that that customer has been created. You can see the associated charges here. You can refund. You can see that my card's been stored securely on Stripe. And it also says that I have an active subscription to the small plan and gives me a host of other information as well. So that's basically how we sign a user up to a subscription. We next need to look at actually cancelling a subscription.